Namo tassa bhagavato arahato samma sambuddhassa. Namo tassa bhagavato arahato samma sambuddhassa. Namo tassa bhagavato arahato samma sambuddhassa. Well, welcome to tonight's talk, and I'm going to go through the very popular Maṅgala Sutta and just go through the English meaning so that we can get the benefit of this wonderful tool. The Maṅgala Sutta is a teaching given to lay people having regular, ordinary lives. It's about how to have a happy life. It's not one of the deeper meditation teachings such as Satipatthana or Anapanasati, and so it doesn't have the preamble of going to the foot of a tree or an empty hut. Rather, this is how to become an agent, the agency of blessings in your life. So it begins with, thus have I heard that on one occasion the Blessed One was staying at Savatthi, or living near Savatthi, at Jeta's Grove in Anathapindika's park. So we're given place where the Buddha was when he was giving this talk. And we've got this lovely picture here of the Buddha and Anathapindika, who is the great donor, foremost of the male donors. And then, in the middle of the night, a certain deva of astounding beauty was lighting up the entire Jeta's Grove, and she bowed down low and approached the Blessed One. This is when the Buddha gave his teachings to the devas, was in the evening. And so they came down to see the Blessed One for advice. Drawing near, she bowed down low before the Blessed One, and then standing one side, she addressed the Sublime One in verse. Many devas and humans have pondered upon blessings, and desiring the well-being of themselves and of humans, they have wondered, what are the highest blessings? Every religion talks about blessings, and most religions ascribe the source of blessings to the God, that we need to petition the God for blessings, and if our petition is heard, then blessings will flow to us from the God. And so the deva is potentially or possibly expecting that, or possibly not. But really, this deva wants to know, what is the greatest source of blessings? And the Buddha perhaps takes a radically different view, as he often does. Rather than ascribing the source and agency of blessings to an outside power, he ascribes the blessings that come to our lives to our own behaviour. That by our own behaviour we are the agent of our own blessings. And so the sutta unfolds with the Buddha's answer, which I'll come to in a moment. And he starts at the very, very, very basic. If you want to have a blessed life, this is how you should conduct. So the Buddha's reply, Asavana Chabalanang. Really, don't hang out with idiots. Just avoid them. And associating with the wise. That could also panditas is the wise ones, but I've seen recently Bhante Sujato translating it as sensible people who are worth listening to. They're sensible, they give good advice, they know how to behave themselves. So if you would have a happy life with blessings in it, you really want to avoid people who are going to cause problems. And you want to spend time with sensible people. Of course, that is a problem because just about all families have at least one idiot in them. It's just the nature of families. And the challenge here is, how do we satisfy our familial duty whilst not associating with those of foolish ways when they're related to us? Well, I truly believe that here the Buddha says that we do not need to associate with people who are foolish and cause problems just because they're our relatives. This is how I understand this. Certainly we should be polite and kind, but there's no need to spend any more time in their presence than is absolutely necessary. It's quite difficult when those of foolish ways are our co-workers. If it's particularly bad at work, one might seriously consider finding a different job where one's co-workers are not foolish. Because it's very difficult to adhere to good virtue and ethics if you're surrounded by people to whom that's not important. And this is the meaning of foolish, someone to whom sila or ethics and morality is not a high priority. If they don't think that not harming, not stealing, not lying is important, then you can't trust them. They're going to steal and lie and do all sorts of things. And we just really should stay away from people who don't value ethics, who don't value sila. They're just not worth the potential of compromising our own values. Whereas when we associate with sensible, wise people, it's easier. It's easy to keep our own values. It's easy to keep our ethics and sila pure and proper. So when we are respectful and we honour those worthy of honour, these are the highest blessings. This way of living, of associating with the wise, of honouring and being respectful to those who are worthy of honour, these are the highest blessings. I love this picture of this cow here. The back story, and you can actually see the little Sinhala writing. The back story is that this monk saved this cow from the slaughter yards. He saved all those cows. And this cow obviously understands that the monk saved its life. I've never seen a cow do that, and I've seen lots of cows. It's a pretty special picture. Good on you, Bhante. Patirupa desawaso cha. you want to live in a suitable location. If you live in a war zone, you're not going to be as happy as if you live in a peaceful place. If you live near and around lots of fools, you're not going to be happy. You're going to have to put up with the consequences of their poor behaviour. Sometimes it's worth moving. So we also want to, having set ourselves on the right direction of keeping care of our sila, when we live in a suitable place, we get the fruits of those past good deeds. These are the highest blessings, that we're able to live in suitable places, that we do receive the fruits of our past good deeds. And then we set ourselves in the right direction for the future, because that brings more blessings in the future. So, having done the right thing in the past, we receive the fruits of those good deeds. When we set ourselves in the right direction, then we get more benefits and more blessings in the future. And these are indeed the highest blessings. So it also brings us a blessed and happy life if we in fact train properly and get great learning and craftwork skills. And there's some pictures of craftwork at the time. But today, often many jobs are information workers or in medicine. But here the Buddha is saying that if we apply our discipline and we learn our trade or our profession, then this will bring blessings into our life. We will be able to support ourselves, and we will be able to support our loved ones, and we'll be able to support our religious community. If we do not have learning and skills to sell on the job market, then we can't even support ourselves, let alone contributing to our community. If we then become a burden on society instead of a blessing. Those who have trades and professions and work, we have the blessing of really being able to take care of ourselves happily. We have the blessing of being able to contribute to the community and the society. And that brings us happiness and joy. When we're disciplined and we've trained carefully, we're able to do what we need to do, and we're able to refrain from what we shouldn't do. And that also brings great blessings. You cannot refrain from doing wrong things if you don't have self-discipline. You can't even apply yourself to learning a trade or a profession if you don't have self-discipline. Speech that is true and pleasant to hear. It's not only truth is right speech. Most of the time we want to be pleasant to hear. We don't want to be harsh. Even when we're speaking a perhaps difficult truth, we particularly want to be kind in our speech. There are times when we must say things that the other person doesn't want to hear. So the Buddha's not saying here that we can't do that. I think possibly pleasant is not not the full meaning of supasita. It's that, when we have to, particularly say children or staff, sometimes we have to say the truth as it is. Don't do that, that will hurt, you'll hurt yourself. You must correct this flaw in yourself. Sometimes we need to have heart-to-hearts with our peers. But actually the more difficult the truth, the more gently and sweetly we should to speak it. It's hard enough to cope with hearing a difficult truth. It's hard enough to cope with being corrected. But if it's said harshly, then it makes it so much more difficult to hear. And if we have the skill and discipline to speak kindly at all times, then this is the highest blessing. These are the highest blessings. This brings such great blessings into our life. Being able to support ourselves, being able to contribute, being able to speak gently and kindly. What a blessed life. And then we are the agency of those blessings. We are the one that brings this blessing into our own life. Similarly, we need to provide for the support of our mother and father. We need to cherish our family, even those black sheep who every family has. We can still love and cherish them even if we want to keep our distance. And naturally we want to engage in ways of work that are not harmful. I put that to a telemarketer once. Not a telemarketer, they were actually a scammer. They were pretending to be from Telstra. I'm sure you've had them. I asked them what it was like to spend all day telling lies and to associate with an entire group of people who also spent all day telling lies. And I wondered if it was possible for them to believe anything their co-workers said, since they all spent all day telling lies for the purpose of getting money off people under false pretenses. Because that's a way of work that harms beings, They were completely put off, and I must say we didn't get any more Telstra calls after that. Fake Telstra calls. Because when you think about it, what sort of life is that? To spend all day, every day, doing a job that hurts people, that causes harm to the community. Weapons, drugs, embezzlement. To me, telephone scammers are just another form of embezzlement. They're tricking you into taking your money under false pretenses. These ways of work harm people, and I'm sure the good people listening tonight, this is completely obvious, but it's also not obvious to everybody. Otherwise, no one would do those jobs. So you need to think very carefully when you take a job. Is this harmful? Is this beneficial? And when you have a job that does benefit, there's so many jobs which bring benefit to society, then you can be happy when you know that your work is of benefit to not only yourself but to the community at large. You can feel happy about that. And then your work is a blessing, not a harm. giving with the heart. So when we give dana, we don't do it on autopilot. We allow that feeling of generosity to arise, and we allow ourselves to enjoy that beautiful feeling of generosity. And when the heart feels full of generosity like that, it's such a blessing. It's such a joy. Similarly, when we take care of our relatives and kin, and that's the wider community, when we act in ways that we cannot blame ourselves and that others, sensible people, cannot blame us. And in that we have to be careful, because even the Buddha got blamed, right? Remember, he got accused of doing various things that he didn't do. He also got blamed for taking young men away from their families and ordaining them into the monkhood. Many of the families blamed him for that. So when we say acting in ways that leave no blame, we also have to moderate that with blamed by who. So really I would like to act in a way that the sensible, wise people don't blame. If the foolish idiots blame me, then I'm probably doing the right thing because they don't have right view. But if the sensible people blame me, then I really need to think carefully about what I'm doing and reconsider. If sensible people are pointing at part of my behaviour, then I would be well advised to consider what they're saying. Because sensible people will blame us when we're doing something that's harming the community, that's harming others, or harming ourselves. But when we know that we're acting in line with what sensible people expect of us, what the wise would think was sensible, then we can feel happy. We can feel happy about who and what we are. We can feel happy about how we undertake our life. And we don't need to feel anxious and worried and afraid, because we have these blessings to take care of us. So we really don't want to allow evil. And when it's gross, that's obvious, and this sutta started off with fairly gross behaviour, don't be doing the gross behaviour. So, I don't know about the word loathe, but as in, if you had the corpse of a dead dog around your neck, which comes in one of the Buddha's similes, you'd pretty much loathe having that corpse of a dead dog around your neck. Yeah, get it off me. And it's in that sense that we're talking loathe here. If you have a negative state of mind, and so we're getting a little more subtle. First of all, if you have disgusting behaviours, then get rid of that out of my life. If we have harmful words, get rid of that out of my life. And if we have harmful states of mind, and it's the harmful states of mind that the Buddha uses the dead dog simile, dead snake as well. Because, I don't know, but sometimes we have this tendency to go, well, it's my worry. I'm worrying. I'm entitled to worry. There's a lot of things to worry about. And then we get attached to worrying. And we feel we ought to worry, that we're not showing concern and care if we're worrying. But worry distorts our perspective, and it's a negative state of mind. It's not useful and it's not beneficial. It doesn't help you plan or avoid any difficulties. It's just fear and doubt. Doubt that you can cope. But if you can have confidence that you are having the right behaviours, that your virtue is pure, that your sila is pure, what have you got to worry about? No matter what happens, if your sila is good, then you will respond in an appropriate manner. And that's all we can ask of ourselves. Similarly, refraining from intoxicants. Well, it's harder to catch ourselves doing something right if we're intoxicated. I mean, it's harder to catch ourselves doing something wrong if we're intoxicated. It's harder to know what we're doing, and so therefore being intoxicated can cause us to lose our virtue, can cause us to do mistakes. So if we are steadfast in our virtue, we hold our virtue as a high value, as really important in our life, then we bring blessings every moment of every day when we hold that virtue. When we abstain from evil, when we reject it and eject it from our heart, from our minds, from our words, from our behaviour, and we don't allow it. When we are steadfast in virtue, these are the highest blessings. Steadfast means not giving up, being persistent, just doing it again and again and again over a long time. Consistent, persistent, to keep on keeping on, to never give up, to get up again every time you fall down, to notice when you make a mistake in virtue, resolve not to make that mistake again, and get up and hold your virtue. We all make mistakes with our virtue. That's why it's a gradual path of training. There's no point in beating yourself up if you discover, oops, I did some evil, or I thought some evil for a moment. The thing to do is to be glad that you noticed and resolve to refrain. No, not going to do that. Going to let go of that. Yes, I know I've got a habit of being anxious. Yes, I know I've got a habit of being grumpy, or whatever your habit is. There's that habit again. Hello, grumpy. I'm not going to have ill will to it. Oh, there's that worry again. Hello, little worry. We don't have to hate them. But we do need to not put up with it, not allow it to hang around. When we're respectful and humble, contented and grateful, this takes our life from being just not awful, whereas though up until now we were getting rid of the negativity or the bad influences in our lives. Now we're particularly with the being steadfast in virtue, that begins the focus on bringing positive things into our lives as well. Being respectful and humble. Being arrogant and proud, it really closes us off to the blessings in life. It closes us off to the beauty. when we're respectful and humble, we can smell the roses. We've got time we've got a softness of attitude that allows us to notice the beautiful things in life. Contented. A lot of our suffering comes from being discontented. Oh, it's not good enough. You know, I only got a B. I need to have an A. Instead of being happy with the B, we're discontented with the B because it's not an A. You know? I only got this job. I didn't get that job. So to be happy is to be contented with what you have now. It doesn't mean that you can't strive for more later, but being contented with what you have now is such a great blessing. It's also the path into understanding dukkha, or it's a path. Because if we can be contented even when things are difficult, and be okay with things being not quite the way we would like them, then we just develop the skill to be equanimous and okay when things are painful. If we cannot even cope with things being not good enough when, you know, it's steady as she goes, life as usual, then we're going to have great difficulty when we make mistakes, or when the world goes pear-shaped, someone dies that we care about, or we lose our job, or, you know, those terrible things that cause us great pain. So if we can practice being contented when things are going all right, then we'll have a better chance of not having ill will towards the situations going wrong, or to someone who hurts us. Being contented allows us to enjoy what we have right now. I remember one of my teachers talking about eating meditation, you know, mindful eating. And he pointed out that discontent, we do it even when we eat. So we put the food in our mouth, and instead of being present with the experience of this mouthful and really enjoying this mouthful and being contented with this mouthful, we've already got our attention off this mouthful and we're digging around in the plate, scooping up the next mouthful. And this is particularly the case when we eat very fast, you know. It's gone, we didn't even notice it. And then the whole meal's gone and we didn't even really experience it, because we were always in the next mouthful, the next mouthful, the next mouthful. So one of the things of doing, say, eating meditation is that practice of enjoying the mouthful we've got. Let's enjoy the experience we got before reaching for the next experience. Listening to the Dhamma regularly, irregularly, from time to time. Any time that you listen to the Dhamma with your heart open and allow the truth of that Dhamma to lift your heart is such a blessing. And even, you know, the same old, you've heard it again and again. When we open our heart to it, every now and again we see a new nuance that we didn't see before. For the Dhamma is so deep. If you think that particular Dharma is looking shallow, you haven't looked at it often enough. Because the more often you look at the Dharma, the more often you hear the Dharma, the deeper it goes and the more you get out of it. And this brings such blessings to our lives. So patience, patience is an interesting thing. We all experience impatience, but patience is that capacity to be okay right now when we're waiting for something. So instead of waiting, being, to accept, and particularly patience on the path, because we all want to, well, many of us want to be further along in the practice than we are. But we have to be patient with ourselves. The training is gradual. We have to do it a little bit at a time. And that's what can be done. Willingness to accept one's faults can be very difficult, and yet it brings such blessings. Because there are very few people who will point out to us what faults we have and do it in a kind and gentle way. And should we have the blessing of having someone who cares about us enough to point out one of our faults in a kind and gentle way, my word, it's such a blessing to be willing to hear that, to be willing to hear and listen to what they've got to say, and to consider whether or not what they're saying has some relevance to you, could be of benefit to you. Now, sometimes when people tell you give advice, it's not actually particularly relevant or helpful. But those that know us the best, our teachers, our partners, our children, they're the ones who, with the clearest view of what our faults are. Yeah? Our partners can usually see our faults better than we can. And if we truly want to learn and grow, then we would need to be willing to hear about that from our partner. We need to be willing to hear what they've got to say. We need to be willing to accept that it's possible that they might be right. They might be right. So, associating with monks and nuns helps us to reflect on these things, helps us see our faults for ourselves, and helps us discover ways to deal with them, to train ourselves out of them, to train ourselves in new ways of being. To discuss the Dhamma at appropriate times. It's very important to discuss it amongst yourselves as well as listening to it, because it's in the process of discussion that we discover how well we actually understand a topic, where we tease out the meaning between us. I would encourage you to discuss this afterwards, or discuss any dharmas amongst yourselves from time to time. It really helps with gaining a deeper understanding. I should have put some monks in there too. So, being disciplined, we undertake our life with self-restraint, So this last sentence, this last paragraph, this last gatha, basically is pointing that by doing all these other things, by bringing our lives into line with the Dhamma, we will bring in blessings and we will become ready for the higher practices. Just living a good, wholesome life, practicing right speech, right thought, will lead eventually to Nibbana and the perception of the Noble Truths, the realization of Nibbana and the very highest blessings of total freedom. So that's tonight's talk. I think that's all of it. Yeah. Oh no. Here we go. Last gatha. I finally got some bhikkhuni pictures as well. So although we have to be involved in the world, the idea is that the mind should remain unshaken, regardless of the provocation. If this is equanimity. Equanimity, one of the Brahma Viharas, the heavenly ways of living. If we can allow our mind to be unshaken, determine that our mind will remain unshaken regardless of what happens in the world, then this is a higher blessing. Hello, Padma. I can see your chats, so it's good to see you. When we are able to be fully content and our mind is able to remain unshaken at all times, and yes, I know this is a very high bar, then we are beyond all sorrow and we are spotless. That is, spotless and secure means that our sila is so much a part of what we are that it's no longer possible to break sila. And that's the true security, when we get to the ultimate discipline, where it becomes part of who and what we are. When our karmas are all positive, our karma is who and what we are. If we have brought all these blessings into our lives every moment, every day, then we are able to attain that highest freedom. And these are indeed the highest blessings. Sadhu, sadhu, sadhu. Hope there's not another gatha hiding there. Oh, there is. There's two more gathas after I thought we were. Oh, I like this picture. I took this photograph. Are you up to that one? They who live by following this path know victory wherever they go, and every place for them is safe. These are the highest blessings. How could it be that every place is safe? Well, if your sila, if your virtue is spotless and secure, then no matter what happens, you will act in a virtuous way. You will respond with right thought, right speech, and right action. And therefore, karmically speaking, you will be safe. Because regardless of whether someone chops your arms and legs off or kills you, if you are karmically safe, then you will have a fortunate rebirth. Also, if a terrible things happen and we survive it, if our virtue is spotless and secure, then we can feel happy even though terrible things are happening. And so therefore we're safe. if our mind and heart can be happy, equanimous, unshaken, then inside we are safe, regardless of what happens in the outside world. And this is the victory, that no one else has the power to force me to do an unwholesome act. No one else has the power to force me to do an evil deed or say an evil word. And this is true victory. This is true power, where I have the power to hold my virtue pure because it is who I am. And in order to make me do something unwholesome, I would have to be somebody other than who I am. So at the moment, while we're still on the path, we still have the capacity to accidentally do something harmful, or even worse, intentionally do something harmful. But as we practice this, and practice restraint, practice joyfulness, practice bringing blessings into our life, practice being willing to accept our faults, practice being contented, then being virtuous becomes who we are. It becomes our habit. And habits have such great power. If we have the habit of responding kindly to all situations, then we're safe, because there's no situation that could cause us to not respond beautifully. Well, I'm going to wrap up for the night, and I was going to chant the blessing, but I'm going to ask you to absolve me of that, and I'll chant this in English another time. This particular translation that I've gone through tonight isn't really the right one for chanting because it doesn't scan properly. So at a different time I'll record the Amravati version of the Maṅgala Sutta. The Amravati chanting book is very useful because it has the English translation in a chantable form. So I have to do that for you another night when I'm feeling a bit better. So thank you all. Good night. Arahang Samma Sambuddho Bhagava Buddhang Bhagavantang Abhivademi. Svakato Bhagavata Dhammo Dhammang Namasami. Supatipanno Bhagavato Sawaka Sangho Sangham Namami. Oh, I forgot to take my hat off.